Hey guys, welcome back to the garden. This week we're going to be covering a lot of material. I have put in chapters to make it easy to navigate to each section, as well as I've put together a quick handout that has all the key points as a printable checklist for you. It's in the description. We're going to be going over how to start tomatoes and peppers from seeds, as well as a few other warm weather plants. And we're going to cover what to do with this big freeze that's coming up here in just a few days. Let's get into it. The first secret that I have for you is you got to pick the right soil to start your tomatoes in. Mine is pretty simple. It is a sifted potting soil. I put it through a quarter mesh hardware cloth strainer to pull out any big chunks. I pre-moisten it just to make sure that it has a good amount of moisture in it so it's not super dry. And what I'm looking for is a light, fluffy mix. Now you know it's going to be a good mix if once you get it wet, you squish it together. It forms a ball and then easily crumbles in your hand. That's a good mixture. It's going to be light, fluffy, hold on to moisture, but still drain well. And it also means it has the right amount of moisture if it does that. We're going to bottom water. So instead of watering from above, which can move the seeds around, and it also has a tendency to compact the soil, we're just going to put some water in the bottom of the tray, let the soil soak it up, and after about 20 or so minutes, dump out the extra water. Now, tomatoes in particular like to go extremely leggy if they don't get the right amount of light. So you want those lights 2 to 3 inches above the plant, and you want to keep that as bright as possible. If your tomatoes do go leggy, it's not a big deal because tomatoes you can always plant deep or pot up deeply and they'll create more roots, but it won't be as strong of a plant as if it had the light more and keeping it more compact. Tomatoes, tomatillos, and peppers, I don't know about eggplant, I've never grown this before, but they all benefit a lot from bottom heat. With a little bit of bottom heat, I had my tomatoes coming up within 3 days last year. The peppers still took a long time. They still took somewhere about 2 weeks. Peppers, for some reason, they're a slow germinator. They take their sweet time. I use this really simple seed mat. It doesn't have a thermostat or anything like that. You just plug it in to turn it on and unplug it to turn it off. A common mistake with the heat mat is leaving it on for forever. You put the plants on the heat for just until they germinate. Once they've germinated, they don't need that extra heat anymore. So once they germinate, you're going to pull them off that and put them just on your regular shelf with a ton of light. Even though we have a long growing season, we have a really short spring. And because we have a really short spring, that's only a little bit of time for those tomatoes to get established, to grow, to put on fruit, and for that fruit to mature before we hit that triple-digit heat that kills everything. Now that triple-digit heat, it's going to kill the pollen and make it sterile. So even if your plant is surviving and it's putting on flowers, you're not going to get any fruit. And we typically hit triple digits sometime in May. So you really want to have these ready to go and ready to put in the ground. For me, I put it in the middle of March and I put protection on it. Some kind of row cover, something to keep it warm, just because I want to get it up and ripening faster. Because we have such a short window of time of ideal conditions for our tomatoes, it's important that we pick the right varieties. Now, every area in the US has a free Master Gardeners Association that has tons of resources and has recommended varieties for your area. These are the ones that have worked well for me. I've put all the stuff from my area, Central Texas or Waco, Texas, in the PDF. If you're in a similar area somewhere in the South with similar conditions, they'll probably do well for you. By far, my favorite is San Marzano's. San Marzano's is a really meaty paste tomato and it's the #1 Italian tomato. Do I have to say anything else? Gardener's Delight. Gardener's Delight is a really large cherry tomato. It's prolific, and I found it to be excellent for everything from salads to sauce. Super Sweet 100. Super Sweet 100 is a very prolific cherry tomato, very sweet, and I eat them by the handful when I'm out in the garden. The first one I'm not growing this year that I have in the past is Yellow Pear. Yellow pear is a cherry tomato type, and it's not bad. It grows well, it doesn't have a lot of pest problems, but it doesn't have that good of a flavor. For my space in my garden, I'm gonna switch that out for super sweet 100s or a new variety that I can try. And the one that I'm just giving up on is black crim. Black crim is recommended for our area, but my experience has been for the last 3 years, I've tried to grow it, and every time it is the #1 bringer of pests to my garden. It is coated in tomato hornworms. I haven't gotten one tomato from the plant. In 3 years, they always get eaten by bugs and they just go rotten and they're gross. So I've decided it doesn't get any more garden space. Now that you have your tomato varieties selected and your labels made, your cells filled up, and you're ready to sow, let's talk about the key things you need to do to have success. #1 is planting depth. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put the tomatoes in. I just keep it very simple, 1 per cell, and then once I have that, we just cover it with 1/4 inch of soil. Because it doesn't need light to germinate, I don't need to use vermiculite, and several people asked, they didn't have vermiculite and they wanted to know if they could just use soil. You can. It's not exactly the same as the vermiculite, but you're still going to get good germination. Now, if you do not want to use or you don't want to have to pot up, because we're 8 weeks before our last frost, I'm definitely going to have to pot these up in about a month, so beginning of February. But if you don't want to do that, you can just do this. So this is just probably a 2.5, maybe a 3-inch pot. And I just put soil about halfway. So you can see, just about halfway. You could start a seed in there, and then once it gets a couple of true leaves, so it's gonna put out little seedling leaves first, and then the true leaves are the leaves that look like a tomato leaf. Once it gets a set of those, or 2 of those, it should be about here. And you're just gonna add soil up until just about those leaves. And you'll let it keep growing. And you should be able to just use this and pot it up from there. I'll show you how to do that when we get there in about a month. All right, peppers. Peppers and tomatoes get planted in basically the same way. The biggest difference I've noticed is peppers really need the bottom heat. So this is just a seed mat that has coils through it. You plug it into the wall. This one's about a decade old. I've used it for a long time. And it just makes it about 10 to 20 degrees warmer than the ambient temperature. In my unheated garage here, that's gonna make it about 70 to 80 degrees, which is ideal for both peppers and tomatoes. Now with that bottom heat, I'm gonna see these tomatoes sprout in somewhere between 3 and 5 days. If I don't have that, it'll still work. It'll be somewhere between 7 and 10 days before you get your tomatoes to sprout. Now with the peppers and I are trying to make friends. Peppers grow really well once they're established, but I have struggled with them in the past. Last year was the most successful I've ever been, and I did 3 things different. The first thing that I did different was I started them way earlier. So as soon as Christmas hit, I knew it was time to go. It's time to start gathering my seeds and all my supplies. The second thing that I did was this bottom heat, and they sprouted. I saw germination after about 2 weeks, some as early as 1 week. But before I used the bottom heat, it was bad. It was like a month before I even knew if it had worked at all. So that was not effective. And the other thing that I did different is I only bottom watered. I didn't do anything on top because they take a really long time to germinate. If I was missing the top, I was finding I was getting fungus gnats or mold or some kind of growth on the top. Whereas if I only bottom watered, it worked much more effectively. So that's what I'm gonna do again. Now these seeds, the hotter the pepper, the longer it's supposed to take to germinate. I don't know who came up with that, but it seems to be true. You're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take these small little seeds that look remarkably like tomato seeds, and I'm just gonna put one per cell. Now, if I was doing a larger container, something like this 2-inch pot, I might be a little bolder. I might put 2 per cell and put them at corners. Now with this I can just push in and cover, push in, cover, that also is effective. You don't have to grab extra soil and put it on top. You can just push it in, cover it up. The essential thing is you're only going down 1/4 of an inch. If you're going down more than that, the pepper is going to have a hard time germinating and coming up to a higher, it only has enough oomph to go 1/4 of an inch. That's its ideal. If it's much more than 1/4 inch depth, it may not be able to sprout and reach the top. All right, guys, I hope you feel comfortable starting your tomatoes and your peppers and any other warm weather crops you have. I would love for you to tell me down in the comments what you're starting right now in your garden, especially what varieties of tomatoes. I'm always on the hunt for something new that people love or they're excited about. Share it with us all down in the comments. Then let's get into what we need to do to get our garden and ourselves ready for this cold front that's coming in. With this cold front coming in, we have to be realistic. We cannot fight Mother Nature and win. We can, however, give a little bit of a buffer to our plants. So I'm not gonna pretend to try to keep tomatoes, peppers, or any of those warm season plants alive. I could, if I wanted to, bring them inside and overwinter them inside. That's gonna be your best bet for anything that's a traditionally warm season crop. Now for cool season things, we're gonna follow the same 3 steps for everything. First, we're gonna water deeply. Second, we're gonna give a thick mulch and really protect the base of that plant. If we protect the base or the crown of that plant, it'll be able to come back and regrow from there so that we haven't lost the entire plant. And lastly, we're gonna cover it. Now what we cover it with depends on what you have on hand and what's in your budget. I wanted to show you some options of things you could do with stuff you probably have around your house. Now here you can see I've got some baby dill. They're real small still, and they're small enough that they could lay pretty flat to the ground. If I put this small cardboard box on it, that's gonna protect it. Now there's still a lot of room on the edges for wind to come under. So this cardboard box is gonna keep anything I put on top from crushing the plant. Then I could put, this is an old sheet. Now this sheet is acting just like it would for us. It's gonna act as a barrier and make it a blanket. Then on top of this, on the edges, let me grab some. On the edges, I would wanna put something heavy on every side to keep the wind out. Now that's probably gonna add about 10, maybe 15 degrees of protection, but if it gets wet, we're gonna be in trouble. So depending on what you're expecting, you might put a tarp over the whole thing. But anything that's gonna keep tarps or row covers or sheets off the plant so it's not being smushed or smothered, that's gonna work for you. Now for larger plants, you can even use a whole cardboard box. There we go. Now, then each one of these, you would put something heavy on, and then of course, close up the top. And again, I would put a tarp over the whole thing just to make it waterproof, and it's gonna help stop that much extra wind. We're gonna give it a good drink. Thick mulch. So I'm giving it a whole lot of mulch. Really trying to protect the base of this. And then I want it big enough that hopefully the leaves aren't touching. And then I put something heavy on top to keep it from flying away in the wind. I popped on this little greenhouse, but I know from experience that at the base, they don't hold to the ground super well, no matter how well you tack them down. So I found that if I fill them up with leaves around the plant to act as an insulator, it really helps them withstand everything. For containers, if you can, you want to bring them inside. If you can't bring them inside, your next best option is the same 3 steps. You're going to water deeply, find a way to cover or wrap this so that you're insulating it, And then you're gonna cover it in some kind of waterproof, windproof material. It could be a tarp, it could be plastic. There's a lot of options as long as you're making sure you're protecting it as much as you can. Again, you're gonna focus on the same area. We're gonna protect the roots and the crown of the plant, because if this is gonna get hurt, which it probably will get damaged, it'll die back, but it'll come back from the base. So as long as you're protecting those roots, then you're gonna get your plant to come back. Now that we have our plants protected, we're gonna take care of our watering system so that we don't have any burst pipes. I've disconnected my hose and put a cover on it. These are really cheap. I got it at Home Depot. I think it was like $1, maybe $1.50. Really cheap. And you want to make sure you disconnect any timers you have and drain them, because the timers, they have a lot of little parts in them, and if they have any residual water, when that water freezes, it's going to expand and break your timers. So you just want to disconnect those and make sure you completely drain them. Now that we have our gardens tucked in, our water lines drained, and everything ready to go as best as we can, it's time to pay attention to taking care of ourselves and our neighbors. My number one tip is to prep everything ahead of time. So I prepped this cooking area. This is just a 3-burner gas grill. It lets me make anything that you can make on a stovetop, I can make right here. I mostly do it for soup, but the big thing is I put it right outside my back door, super close, like 10 paces. And I've also checked every single connection on it this week. So I went through with soapy water and made sure that all these connections are still good. I've made sure I have plenty of propane in the tank, and I'm good to go. Now, if for some reason this doesn't work, I also have backup of charcoal, which you're not gonna burn inside, charcoal briquettes that can produce carbon monoxide and you can die. And I also have some wood, some dry wood stacked. Now, I don't have a way to really use the charcoal or the wood, but my neighbors, most of them have wood fire grills or smokers or barbecues that can use charcoal briquettes or wood. In the past, when we've had issues like this, I've made sure that they're taken care of, and I bring them over some wood or some briquettes just to make sure that everyone in the neighborhood's good. And I'm sure they would be more than willing to let me come cook on their outdoor grills if this, for some reason, doesn't work for me. My next biggest tip is you're gonna be cold. So you're gonna wear layers, multiple coats, hats, socks, gloves, and all of that, but it's still gonna be really cold inside if the power goes out. This is a portable heater that is safe for indoor use. It's a Portable Buddy Mr. Heater. Now, there are some of these still in stores, and it just takes these little propane tanks. These are designed for hunting blinds, so it's designed for extreme conditions. I put mine in my master bedroom and bathroom. I open the master bathroom window because you have to have either a door or a window to outside open to make sure you're getting the right amount of airflow so you're not getting a carbon monoxide buildup. Then once that gets warmed up, and it only takes like 15, maybe 30 minutes for it to get up for, about 15 to 20 degrees above whatever it was. And then I can close the window and let that little room, just the master bedroom and bathroom, stay warm enough to be usable. Now, you're not gonna be super, super toasty. We're not gonna be up there in the 80s, delightful warm, but we can get it from like the 30s to the 50s. And for me, in the past, when I've tried it, having it burn for about 15 to 30 minutes was enough to get it up to about 55 or 60 degrees, and it kept that temperature for about 3 to 4 hours. And one of these little canisters has a 6-hour burn time. Well, it depends. Everything depends, but somewhere between 6 and 8 hours. So if I only need to use it every 15 minutes, every 3 to 4 hours, then I have plenty of fuel to get me through whatever is coming the next few days. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have plenty of bottled water on hand, because a lot of times when we have these cold systems come in, the water main breaks and it can get contaminated water, and you're on a boil notice for 24, 48, however many hours. But it's very difficult to boil water if you don't have a way to heat it up. Also, I don't want to come outside every single time. When I just get up in the morning and I want to brush my teeth, I don't want to get up and boil water. Having some water bottles on hand is just a simple precaution you can do to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I'm also going to recommend that you have easy food on hand. So something that doesn't require any prep. I'm talking easy vegetables, easy fruits. So like a carrot that you don't have to cook that. You can just have a quick peel and eat the carrot. Fruit that you can just grab and go. Muffins, bread, something easy that you can make that you don't have to put any effort and a lot of time into. The Sub-Zero sleeping bag, I just put it inside my bed, so kept it all together, slid it inside all the covers, and this made a huge difference in me being able to stay warm enough to sleep and rest and stay safe. Once you've taken care of yourself and your family and you made sure you have a way to cook, a way to stay warm, and you have plenty of food and water on hand, you're going to want to make sure you check in on your neighbors ahead of time and just have a plan. Let them know that if they need something, you can help them. So my neighbors are a little bit older, which means if they try to come outside in the snow and the ice, they could fall down, and that could be a serious situation for them. Whereas if I go outside and I fall down, I'm just embarrassed. So we coordinate together. They have more resources than I do. They have a whole bunch of outdoor grilling stuff. I only have a little gas-fired grill. If for some reason my gas stove cooktop's not working, I could go over to them, and we have wood and we have charcoal briquettes. We would have a way to cook if we work together. I think that's everything, you guys. If I forgot anything, please leave it down in the comments. I really want to know what you guys are growing, and if you have any questions or any concerns, please leave them down in the comments. I really want to make this a positive community where we help each other, we uplift each other, where we work on helping ourselves and each other become the best gardeners that we can be, but more importantly, the best people we can be. And I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. This week's garden chores is to prepare for this big cold front, and if you have time, pick up some onion sets and seed potatoes.